Today is the 18th of September, and this is the 60th time we are speaking on the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. Tonight we come to Sutta 143, Anathapindiko Vada Sutta, advice to Anathapindika. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, the householder Anathapindika was afflicted, suffering and gravely ill. Then he addressed a certain man thus, "Come, good man, go to the Blessed One, pay homage in my name with your head at his feet and say, 'Venerable Sir, the householder Anathapindika is afflicted, suffering and gravely ill.' He pays homage with his head at the Blessed One's feet. Then go to the Venerable Sariputta, pay homage in my name with your head at his feet and say, 'Venerable Sir, the householder Anathapindika is afflicted, suffering and gravely ill.' He pays homage with his head at the Venerable Sariputta's feet. Then say, 'It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Venerable Sariputta would come to the residence of the householder Anathapindika out of compassion.' 'Yes, sir,' the man replied, and he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he sat down at one side and delivered his message. Then he went to the Venerable Sariputta, and after paying homage to the Venerable Sariputta, he delivered his message, saying, 'It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Venerable Sariputta would come to the residence of the householder Anathapindika out of compassion.' The Venerable Sariputta consented in silence." Stop here for a moment. This Anathapindika is actually this actually his nickname, and his real name I think is Sudatta, something like that. And he offered this Jetavana, this grove, which he bought from Prince Jeta to make into a monastery. And it is probably one of the Buddha's favorite monasteries because he spent the most number of vasas, rains retreat, in this monastery compared to other monasteries. Also, you notice here, this Anathapindika is gravely ill, and he asked a man to go and inform the Buddha, and also to inform Venerable Sariputta. But he only asked the Venerable Sariputta to come and visit him, come to his residence. It seems that of all the monks, he has the greatest respect for Venerable Sariputta. Then the Venerable Sariputta dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went to the residence of the householder Anathapindika with the Venerable Ananda as his attendant. Having gone there, he sat down on a seat made ready and said to the householder Anathapindika, "I hope you are getting well, householder. I hope you are comfortable. I hope your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is apparent." And he said, "Venerable Sariputta, I'm not getting well. I'm not comfortable. My painful feelings are increasing, not subsiding. Their increase and not their subsiding is apparent. Just as if a strong man were splitting my head open with a sharp sword, so too violent winds cut through my head. I am not getting well. I am not comfortable, etc. Just as if a strong man were tightening a tough leather strap around my head as a headband, so too there are violent pains in my head. I am not getting well, I am not comfortable, etc. Just as if a skilled butcher or his apprentice were to carve up an ox's belly with a sharp butcher's knife, so too violent winds are carving up my belly. I am not getting well. Just as if two strong men were to seize a weaker man by both arms and roast him over a pit of hot coals, so too there is a violent burning in my body. I'm not getting well. I'm not comfortable. My painful feelings are increasing, not subsiding. Their increase and not their subsiding is apparent. Stop here for a moment. You see here in paragraph 3, Venerable Sariputta dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, went to the residence of the householder Anathapindika with the Venerable Ananda as his attendant. During the Buddha's time, this was the norm. If a monk goes somewhere to either to a family to visit, like in this case, or maybe to the nuns' quarters to teach the Dhamma, he is always accompanied by a more junior monk as the attendant. Nowadays, very few monasteries practice this, and those, except those who keep very strict Vinaya. And also, you notice in paragraph 4, this Anathapindika, he said his painful feelings are increasing, and as if a strong man was splitting my head open with a sharp sword. So violent winds cut through my head. As if a strong man were tightening a tough leather strap around my head. Violent pains, there are violent pains in my head. Just as if a butcher were to carve up an ox's belly, so two violent winds are carving up my belly. Just as if two strong men were to seize a weaker man and roast him over a pit of hot coals, so too there is a violent burning in my body. So you can see from his description, his pains are very severe. And these are the death pains when somebody is about to die. All these pains are like that. So in a few years' time, when our time comes, you can expect all this before you pass away. For a lot of people. Then householder, you should train thus: I will not cling to the eye, and my consciousness will not be dependent on the eye. Thus you should train. You should train thus: I will not cling to the ear, and my consciousness will not be dependent on the ear. Similarly, I will not cling to the nose, to the tongue, to the body, to the mind, and my consciousness will not be dependent on these sense bases. Householder, you should train thus: I will not cling to forms, I will not cling to sounds, to odors, to flavors, to tangibles, to mind objects, and my consciousness will not be dependent on these external sense objects. Thus you should train. Householder, you should train thus: I will not cling to eye consciousness, to ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, and my consciousness will not be dependent on these sense consciousness. Householder, you should train thus: I will not cling to eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact, and my consciousness will not be dependent on sense contact. Thus you should train. Householder, you should train thus: I will not cling to feeling born of eye contact, to feeling born of ear contact, to feeling born of nose contact, to feeling born of tongue contact, to feeling born of body contact, to feeling born of mind contact, and my consciousness will not be dependent on feeling born of sense contact. Thus you should train. Stop here for a moment. So here you see paragraph 5. I will not cling to the eye, to the ear, nose, tongue, and all that. And my consciousness will not be dependent on these sense bases. And then number 6, will not cling to the external sense objects, and my consciousness will not be dependent on the external sense objects. Number 7, I will not cling to eye consciousness, ear consciousness, etc., and my consciousness will not be dependent on these sense consciousnesses. So this one you see here, It's like implying there is another type of consciousness other than these 6 sense consciousnesses. In the Kevada Sutta of the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha said that the state of Nibbana or Parinibbana, in that state, after Arahant has passed on, that there is a type of consciousness which is luminous and boundless, and yet it is different from the normal consciousness in that it has no object. Normally, our 6 sense consciousness must have an object. Eye consciousness, you must have a form for you to see before the eye consciousness can arise. Similarly, there must be sound before the ear consciousness can arise, etc. For the 6 sense basis. But for this this state of parinibbana, after Arahant has passed on, that consciousness is boundless and has no object. Where the Buddha says has no long and short, no big and small, etc. No discrimination. So this seems to imply that consciousness. Then number 8, I will not cling to the different types of contact, the sense contact. I will not cling to the feelings. My consciousness will not cling to feelings, not dependent on feelings. Householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to the earth element. I will not cling to the water element, fire element, air element, space element, consciousness element. And my consciousness will not be dependent on these elements. Thus you should train. Householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to material form, to feeling, perception, volition, consciousness. And my consciousness will not be dependent on these aggregates. Householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to the base of infinite space, to the base of infinite consciousness, to the base of nothingness, to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And my consciousness will not be dependent on these arupas or arupa jhanas. Thus should you train. Householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to this world, and my consciousness will not be dependent on this world. I will not cling to the world beyond, and my consciousness will not be dependent on the world beyond. Thus you should train. Householder, you should train thus. I will not cling to what is seen, heard, sensed, cognized, encountered, sought after, and examined by the mind. And my consciousness will not be dependent on that. Thus you should train. I'll stop here for a moment. So we go back to paragraph 10. Here is advising him not to cling to the 6 elements in the body and the mind. And 11, not to cling to the 5 aggregates which we take to be I and mind. And then number 12, not to cling to the various arupas, arupa jhanas, and in other words, not to cling to the jhanas. But I don't think our Anathapindika has attained the jhanas. And then number 13, I will not cling to this world. I will not cling to the world beyond. I guess you can only do that if you are Arahant. And then I will not cling to what is seen, heard, sensed. What is seen are sights, what is heard are sounds. And then the last one, sought after and examined by the mind. What is examined by the mind are thoughts. So the middle one, sense, refers to smells, taste and touch. In other words, I will not cling to sights, sounds, smells, taste, touch and thoughts. These sense objects. When this was said, the householder Anathapindika wept and shed tears. Then the Venerable Ananda asked him, "Are you foundering, householder? Are you sinking?" And he said, "I am not foundering, Venerable Ananda. I am not sinking. But although I have long waited upon the teacher and the monks worthy of esteem, never before have I heard such a talk on the Dhamma. And Venerable Sariputta said, such talk on the Dhamma householder is not given to lay people clothed in white. Such talk on the Dhamma is given to those who have gone forth. And he said, well then, Venerable Sariputta, let such talk on the Dhamma be given to lay people clothed in white. There are clansmen with little dust in their eyes who are wasting away through not hearing such talk on the Dhamma. Will be those who will understand the Dhamma. Then after giving the householder Anathapindika this advice, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Ananda rose from their seats and departed. Soon after they had left, the householder Anathapindika died and reappeared in the Tusita heaven. I'll stop here for a moment. So you see earlier in the Sutta, when the way Anathapindika described his sickness, that as though his what's his description? As though you are saying that his painful feelings are increasing, violent winds cut through the head, violent pains in the head, violent winds carving up the belly, violent roasting in the body, all this. After Venerable Sariputta heard, Venerable Sariputta realized this man is going to pass away very soon. So gave him very serious talk on the Dhamma, which is normally only given to monks. And then he was quite touched by this Dhamma, which he had never heard before. That's why he wept. So you see, after Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda left, Anathapindika passed on and reappeared in the Tusita heaven. This is interesting, his rebirth in the Tusita heaven. Why? Because this Anathapindika is the man, you can see, who gave the most material offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha. The layman who gave the most. The laywoman who gave the most was Visakha. So Anathapindika, you can see he has perfect dana. He has done perfect dana. You cannot do higher offering, material offering, than to the Buddha and the monk and nun Sangha. And then I guess somebody like Anathapindika, having heard a lot of Dhamma from the Buddha, staunch supporter of the Buddha, he must have been keeping very good sila also. But as a layman, I don't think he really meditated and attained the jhanas. So you see, somebody who has perfect dana and sila is reborn in the Tusita heaven. So you can guess from here that if you just rely on dana and sila, generosity and moral conduct, the highest you can go, you can expect to go is to be reborn in the Tusita heaven. So this is the fourth heaven in the sensual desire realm. The lowest is the heaven of the four great heavenly kings. The second is the Tavatimsa heaven, the heaven of the 33 gods. And then the next is the Yama gods. And then the fourth is Tusita heaven. The fifth is Nimanarati heaven. And the sixth is Paranimita Vasavati heaven. The fifth and the sixth, they have very high blessings, so much so that when they just think of anything they want, it appears. So it seems to me that only people who practice a spiritual path generally are reborn in the fifth and the sixth heaven, or higher than that, Brahma heavens. So you see somebody like Mara, he's born in the sixth heaven, sixth heaven or sensual desire realm. So I have a feeling somebody like Mara must have been a cultivator, possibly a monk in the previous life. But the ego, he cannot let go of the ego. So although he has a lot of blessings, because of the ego, he's reborn as Mara, or somebody else might be born in Mara's retinue. So have a lot of blessings, but this it shows this ego is very important. It's very important to cut, to eliminate. Otherwise, you'll be joining Mara up there. Then when the night was well advanced, Anathapindika, now a young god of beautiful appearance, went to the Blessed One, illuminating the whole of Jeta's grove. After paying homage to the Blessed One, he stood at one side and addressed the Blessed One in stanzas. Oh, blessed is this Jeta's grove, dwelt in by the sagely Sangha, wherein resides the King of Dhamma Raja, the fount or source of all my happiness. By action, knowledge and Dhamma, by virtue and noble way of life, by these are mortals purified, not by lineage or wealth. Therefore, a wise person who sees what truly leads to his own good should investigate the Dhamma and purify himself with it. Sariputta has reached the peak in virtue, peace, and wisdom's ways. Any monk who has gone beyond, at best, can only equal him. That is what the young god Anathapindika said, and the teacher approved. Then the young god Anathapindika, thinking, the teacher has approved of me, paid homage to the Blessed One, and keeping him on his right, he vanished at once. When the night had ended, the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, last night when the night was well advanced, there came to me a certain young god of beautiful appearance who illuminated the whole of Jeta's grove. After paying homage to me, he stood at one side and addressed me in stanzas thus, Oh, blessed is this Jeta's grove, dwelt in by the sagely Sangha, etc. That is what the young god said. Then the young god, thinking, the teacher has approved of me, paid homage to me, and keeping me on his right, he vanished at once. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, Surely, Venerable Sir, that young god must have been Anathapindika, for the householder Anathapindika had perfect confidence in the Venerable Sariputta. Good, Ananda, you have deduced the right conclusion. That young god was Anathapindika, no one else. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Now we come to the next sutta, 144, Chano Vada Sutta, Advice to Channa. This sutta is also found in the Samyutta Nikaya, under the 35th chapter. The sutta is the 87th sutta there. In other words, Samyutta Nikaya, Sutta 35.87. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now on that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Mahachunda, and Venerable Channa were living on the mountain Vulture Peak, Gijakutta. On that occasion, the Venerable Channa was afflicted, suffering and gravely ill. Then when it was evening, the Venerable Sariputta rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Mahachunda and said to him, Friend Chunda, let us go to the Venerable Channa and ask about his illness. Yes, friend, Venerable Mahachunda replied. Then the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahachunda went to the Venerable Channa and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, they sat down at one side. And the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Channa, I hope you are getting well, friend Channa. I hope you are comfortable. I hope your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is apparent. And he replied, Friend Sariputta, I am not getting well. I am not comfortable. My painful feelings are increasing, not subsiding. And then he described, similarly as the previous sutta, 143, paragraph 4, these death pains that he is feeling. And he said, I shall use the knife, friend Sariputta. I have no desire to live. So this monk, he says he wants to commit suicide. His pains are extremely painful. He has no more desire to live. During the Buddha's time, it's not like nowadays. We have painkillers, we have a lot of very advanced in medicine. In those days, monks, like these disciples of the Buddha, when they are sick, they rely mainly on urine as their medicine. Stale urine. They're supposed to keep urine for 7 days with some medicinal fruits. So when his pain is quite severe, like this monk, he has no more desire to live. One thing you must understand, even an arahant experiences pain because there are two types of pain, bodily suffering and mental suffering. Aryans have no more mental suffering because Aryans, they understand Kamma Vipaka, they understand the Dhamma, they accept whatever comes. Unlike ordinary person, Putujana. But even Aryans have bodily pain due to growing old, sickness and dying. So he experiences the same bodily pain as any other person. And then Venerable Sariputta said, "Let the Venerable Channa not use the knife. Let the Venerable Channa live. We want the Venerable Channa to live. If he lacks suitable food, I will go in search of suitable food for him. If he lacks suitable medicine, I will go in search of suitable medicine for him. If he lacks a proper attendant, I will attend on him. Let the Venerable Channa not use the knife. Let the Venerable Channa live. We want the Venerable Channa to live." And he said, "Friend Sariputta, it is not that I have no suitable food and medicine or no proper attendant, but rather, friend Sariputta, the teacher has long been worshipped by me with love, not without love. For it is proper for the disciple to worship the teacher with love, not without love. Friend Sariputta, remember this, the monk Channa will use the knife blamelessly." Stop here for a moment. So you can see from here, he says, the teacher has long been worshipped by me. Normally, when a monk attains arahanthood, when he comes to tell the Buddha, or he tells other monks, he will say that the teacher has been worshipped by me. That means he has given the highest veneration to the Buddha by attaining arahanthood. So here he is implying that he has attained arahanthood for a long time. And this is further strengthened by this last sentence here. He said, "Friend Sariputta, remember this, the monk Channa will use the knife blamelessly." The Buddha says in the suttas that if a monk dies as an arahant, then even if he commits suicide, is blameless because he has finished his work. So it's quite clear from here that he is trying to tell Venerable Sariputta that he's already attained arahanthood quite a long time. But in the commentary, commentary to this Majjhima Nikaya, the commentaries which are written by later monks, they say that he overestimated himself, that he was still an ordinary person, which I think is not correct. And Venerable Sariputta said, "We would ask the Venerable Channa certain questions if the Venerable Channa finds it opportune to reply. Ask friend Sariputta, when I have heard, I shall know. Friend Channa, do you regard the eye consciousness and things cognizable by the mind through eye consciousness thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself? Similarly, do you regard the ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, the corresponding consciousness and things cognizable through the consciousness thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself?" And he answered, "Friend Sariputta, I regard the eye consciousness and things cognizable by the mind through eye consciousness thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Similarly, I regard the ear, nose, tongue, body, mind consciousness and things cognizable by the mind through mind consciousness thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself." And Venerable Sariputta asked again, "Friend Channa, What have you seen? What have you directly known in the eye, in eye consciousness, and in things cognizable by the eye through eye consciousness, that you regard them thus? This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. What have you seen? What have you directly known in the ear, in the nose, in the tongue, in the body, in the mind, in mind consciousness, and in things cognizable by the mind through mind consciousness, that you regard them thus? This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And he replied, Friend Sariputta, it is through seeing cessation, through directly knowing cessation in the eye, in eye consciousness, and in things cognizable by the mind through eye consciousness, that I regard them thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. It is through seeing cessation, through directly knowing cessation in the ear, in the nose, in the tongue, in the body, in the mind, in mind consciousness, and in things cognizable by the mind through mind consciousness, that I regard them thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Stop here for a moment. So this Venerable Sariputta, because he does not have psychic power, he is not able to read the mind of this Venerable Channa and determine whether he is already an Arahant or not. That's why he asked him these Dharma questions to try to test him to see whether he's an Arahant or not. But he replies, his replies are appropriate of an Arahant, that he says he sees all these sense organs, sense consciousnesses and sense objects as not mine. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And when Venerable Sariputta asks him, how do you know this? Then he says, he has seen cessation, he has directly known cessation in the eye and eye consciousness, etc. So this can mean two things. Either he has seen very clearly with wisdom, or he may have attained a cessation of feeling and perception, that state where consciousness ceases entirely. So you can draw two conclusions from here. When he says he has seen cessation, directly known cessation in the sense objects, in the sense bases, etc. Either he has seen by wisdom, or he has seen directly through cessation of feeling and perception. But in either case also, you can see from here, he's very sure of himself. Venerable Channa is very sure of himself. When this was said, the Venerable Mahachunda said to the Venerable Channa, Therefore, friend Channa, this instruction of the Blessed Ones is to be constantly given attention. There is wavering in one who is dependent. There is no wavering in one who is independent. When there is no wavering, there is tranquility. When there is tranquility, there is no bias. When there is no bias, there is no coming and going. When there is no coming and going, there is no passing away and reappearing. When there is no passing away and reappearing, there is no here, nor beyond, nor in between. This is the end of suffering. So you can see from here also, Venerable Mahachunda also probably does not have the ability to determine whether this Venerable Channa is an Arahant or not. So he gave him this advice. He said, wavering in one who is dependent. Dependent on what? Dependent on forms, on sounds, on the sense objects, on the sense basis, on the sense consciousness, etc. Just like earlier we read in the Anathapindika Sutta, where Venerable Sariputta spoke to this Anathapindika. I told him not to depend on all these sense bases, sense objects, sense consciousness, etc. Then when the mind is not dependent on these, then there's no wavering. And when there's no wavering, there is tranquility. And then there is tranquility, there's no bias, there's no coming and going. There's no passing away and reappearing. No here, nor beyond, nor in between. That means no rebirth back here or in some other plane of existence, or in between. can be like the intermediate state before rebirth, before entering the womb. Then when the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahachunda had advised the Venerable Channa thus, they rose from their seats and went away. Then soon after they had gone, the Venerable Channa used the knife. That means he committed suicide. Then the Venerable Sariputta went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and said to the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Channa has used the knife. What is his destination? What is his future course? And the Buddha said, Sariputta, didn't the monk Channa declare to you his blamelessness? And then Venerable Sariputta said, Venerable Sir, there is a Vajjan village called Pubajira. There the Venerable Channa had families that were his friends, families that were his intimates, families that were blameworthy. And the Buddha said, there are those families that were friends of the monk Channa, Sariputta, families that were his intimates, families that were blameworthy. But I do not say that to this extent he was blameworthy. Sariputta, when one lays down this body and clings to a new body, then I say one is blameworthy. There was none of that in the monk Channa. The monk Channa used the knife blamelessly. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Sariputta was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So here you can see when Venerable Sariputta asked the Buddha where was this Venerable Channa reborn, the Buddha said, didn't the monk Channa declare to you his blamelessness? That means that he already attained arahanthood. But even though the Buddha said that, this Venerable Sariputta was doubtful. He said there is this families that were friends of Venerable Channa, families that were very intimate to him, families that were blameworthy. Blameworthy in the sense that they were too intimate with the Venerable Channa. So the Buddha said that even to the extent that they were blameworthy, but this Venerable Channa was not blameworthy. The Buddha says because he was not reborn. He didn't cling to another body. And the Buddha says there was none of that in the monk Channa. The monk Channa used the knife blamelessly. That means the Buddha is also very definite that the monk Channa was an arahant. But the commentaries say a bit different. The commentaries say that this Venerable Channa cut his throat. And at the moment he cut his throat, fear arose. Meaning he was still an ordinary person, Putujana. Then he immediately meditated and developed insight and became liberated. It's hard to believe. I think if he has fear at that stage, it's difficult to calm his mind and develop insight and attain arahanthood all in a matter of a few seconds. And also the commentary and the sub-commentary says when this sutta mentions families that were his friends, families that were his intimates, families that were blameworthy, the commentaries and sub-commentaries says that Venerable Channa associated with families in improper ways. But I don't think as an arahant he behaved improperly to these families. I think the most was he was very intimate to them. Probably they were very have strong affinity with him through many lifetimes. So he was very intimate with them. Probably goes often to see them, to teach them the Dhamma, to accept their offerings and all that. But you can see since the Buddha said there was none of that in the monk Channa. The monk Channa used the knife blamelessly. So you can see from here what the commentary says cannot be accepted, cannot be trusted. The monk Channa, he said for a long time already, he had worshipped the Buddha for a long time already, he had attained arahanthood. So this is one of the suttas which shows that during the Buddha's time there were some arahants who committed suicide. But in the Buddha's Dhammavinaya, it is blameless so long as he has finished his work. If he has finished his work, does not take up another body, then he can commit suicide as not blameworthy at all. Now we come to Sutta 145, Punnovada Sutta, Advice to Punna. This sutta is also found in the Samyutta Nikaya 35.88. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then when it was evening, the Venerable Punna rose from meditation and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to the Blessed One, he sat down at one side and said to him, Venerable Sir, it would be good if the Blessed One would give me brief advice. Having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I will abide alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute. Well then, Punna, listen and attend carefully to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Punna replied. I'll stop here for a moment. When a monk has ordained, had taken the higher ordination, he's supposed to stay with the teacher for 5 years. Either stay with the preceptor or stay with the teacher. The preceptor in Pali is called the Upajjhaya. The teacher in Pali is called the Acharya. This word Acharya in Thailand came to be called Achanna. So it looks like this Venerable Punna, he has gone through this probationary period, 5 years staying with a teacher. Now he wants to go and stay alone and practice hard. So he came to the Buddha for some brief instructions. The Blessed One said, Punna, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. If a monk delights in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises in him. With the arising of delight, Punna, there is the arising of suffering, I say. There are, Punna, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, mind objects cognizable by the mind that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. If a monk delights in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises in him. With the arising of delight, Punna, there is the arising of suffering, I say. Punna, there are forms cognizable by the eye, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, flavors, tangibles, mind objects that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. If a monk does not delight in them, welcome them and remain holding to them, delight ceases in him. With the cessation of delight, Punna, there is the cessation of suffering, I say. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that we are usually attracted by the 6 sense objects, forms, beautiful forms, nice music, nice perfume, good taste, touch and thoughts. So if we take delight in these sense objects, then craving will arise. There's a natural consequence. The Buddha says in sensual pleasures, whenever we enjoy anything, there is a tendency to crave for it, to want it again and again. And from there, attachment arises. But then in this world, the Buddha says everything must change. Everything is impermanent. So, for example, relationships change, people change, etc. And even property, wealth and all that also can change. So because you attach to it, when it changes, it gives you suffering. But if you don't attach to it, then when it changes, then you do not suffer. You don't suffer. Now that I have given you this brief advice, Punna, in which country will you dwell? Venerable Sir, now that the Blessed One has given me this brief advice, I am going to dwell in the Sunaparanta country. Punna, the people of Sunaparanta are fierce and rough. If they abuse you and threaten you, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta abuse and threaten me, then I shall think, these people of Sunaparanta are kind, truly kind, in that they did not give me a blow with the fist. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. But Punna, if the people of Sunaparanta do give you a blow with the fist, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta do give me a blow with the fist, then I shall think, these people of Sunaparanta are kind, truly kind, in that they did not give me a blow with a clod. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. But Punna, if the people of Sunaparanta do give you a blow with a clod, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta do give me a blow with a clod, then I shall think, these people of Sunaparanta are kind, truly kind, in that they did not give me a blow with a stick. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. But Punna, if the people of Sunaparanta do give you a blow with a stick, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta do give me a blow with a stick, then I shall think, these people of Sunaparanta are kind, truly kind, in that they did not give me a blow with a knife. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. But Punna, if the people of Sunaparanta do give you a blow with a knife, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta do give me a blow with a knife, then I shall think, these people of Sunaparanta are kind, truly kind, in that they have not taken my life with a sharp knife. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. But Punna, if the people of Sunaparanta do take your life with a sharp knife, what will you think then? Venerable Sir, if the people of Sunaparanta do take my life with a sharp knife, then I shall think thus, there have been disciples of the Blessed One, who, being humiliated and disgusted by the body and by life, sought to have their lives deprived by the knife. But I have had my life deprived by the knife without seeking for it. Then I shall think thus, Blessed One. Then I shall think thus, Sublime One. And the Buddha said, good Punna, possessing such self-control and peacefulness, you will be able to dwell in the Sunaparanta country. Now, Punna, it is time to do as you think fit. I'll stop here for a moment. So you can see from here, this monk, he's a person with great forbearance. He says, even these people do all these things to me, I'll still be happy. Even they take my life or so, I will think there are disciples of the Buddha who asked to be killed, who commit suicide. But here I don't have to ask, they take my life. It shows that he has seen the Dhamma very clearly. He's Arya. Even he dies also, he doesn't mind. Also, he knows that these people of Sunaparanta are very fierce and rough. Yet, he still wants to go to such a place. So actually, a lot of the Buddha's disciples, these Arahant disciples and Aryan disciples, they are the ones who went all over India to teach the Dhamma to people. And it is not the so-called bodhisattvas. These bodhisattvas, Manjushri and Avalokitesvara and all these, all were appeared later in later books that suddenly surfaced. The actual people who did all this teaching of the Dhamma were all the Aryan disciples of the Buddha. That's why today we are so fortunate to have this teaching transmitted down to us after 2,500 years. Then, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, the Venerable Punna rose from his seat and, after paying homage to the Blessed One, departed, keeping him on his right. He then set his resting place in order, took his bowl and outer robe, and set out to wander towards the Sunaparanta country. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived in the Sunaparanta country, and there he lived. Then, during the rains, the Venerable Punna established 500 men lay followers and 500 women lay followers in the practice, and he himself realized the 3 true knowledges. On a later occasion, the Venerable Punna attained final Nibbana. Then a number of monks went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him, Venerable Sir, the clansman Punna, who was given brief advice by the Blessed One, has died. What is his destination? What is his future course? And the Buddha said, "Monks, the clansman Punna was wise. He practiced in accordance with the Dhamma and did not trouble me in the interpretation of the Dhamma. The clansman Punna has attained final Nibbana." That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So you see, this Venerable Punna went to this Unaparanta, and then he practiced and attained Arahanthood. That's why when he died, he attained final Nibbana. And you can see from here, he taught 500 men lay followers and 500 women lay followers in the practice. And then probably not long after he died, because the monks asked the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, the clansman Punna, who was given brief advice by the Blessed One, has died." That means the Buddha gave him brief advice not so long ago. They still remember the Buddha gave him brief advice. So probably within a year after he went to that place, he passed on. So although it's not mentioned here how he died, he could very well have been killed by these people, because these people are very rough and fierce. So this is one of the monks who went to various parts of India to teach the Dhamma and benefited a lot of people. And even before going, he realized that he's willing to sacrifice his life just to go there and teach the people. Okay, we stop here. Anything to discuss? Maybe Venerable Sariputta gave him this talk. It's like a general talk that they normally give to monks, because you must remember during the Buddha's time there are thousands and thousands of monks. So when the monks died, probably Venerable Sariputta had to give this standard talk to them. So that's why he talked on these things. You find many of the things I would imagine they are beyond the practice of this Anathapindika. But anyway, that's why this you can see this Anathapindika. I never heard this kind of talk before. You are so moved. He shed tears. Because it's beyond lay people, unless you have practiced to that stage. If you are given that type of talk, it's no point, because you have not reached that stage to realize what he says. I think when a person is dying, there is not much we can do to help that person. What he has done the last few years, his karma will support him. If a person has practiced the Dhamma for several years, then when death comes, he's prepared. But if a person has not practiced the Dhamma, and last minute you want to teach him the Dhamma, is quite impossible. A lot of people, they they have told me that their mother or their father has not been interested in the Dhamma. So now when the time for them to approach death, death is approaching, then they start to see relatives who have passed on, that means the ghosts of relatives who have passed on appearing to them, then they get scared. Then they, like today, one man asked me to go for house dana because the mother is not interested in the Dhamma, so at least to give her an opportunity to do house dana offering to monks, so at least she can benefit. So I think if such a person, even we were to go there and speak the Dhamma to them, it's not easy for them to comprehend the Dhamma. Especially so late in life, their mind is already weak, their mind is troubled, utterly confused. It's not easy to understand. It takes a lot of effort to prepare for death. It takes many years. Just like a long distance run. It's not a short run, 100 meters dash. In which case, even you bring a monk who is a very good Dharma preacher to this old lady, also not much use. So not much difference whether at Buddha's time or now.
Can you say that Dharma will just help us get, depending on which realm that they go to, like the undergoes, the offer food, to be a little bit better off, but they will still be born in a woeful state when they are not taking the reset or so.
Yes, yeah. So at least if they are born in the woeful place, at least they get food to eat. That's important. Born as an animal also, you get food to eat, as a rich lady's dog or something.
In our present situation, when the patient is very delicate and usually after an operation and cannot recover, doctors will definitely give morphine. And morphine is greater and greater until patient dies. Is that on the verge of committing killing or is compassionate act or because doctors do not trace just about morphine.
Oh, but then the intention is good when the doctor gives morphine to the dying patient is to ease the pain. But of course, it's up to the family. If the family feels it's not good for that person, then can stop the doctor.
The doctor usually wise, they ask family what they put it on to the family to say whether to go on or this is a personal experience.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of apprehension on my part. Say yes, go with me, no. But there again, like you said, there's some intention of passion for life. Therefore, that will let go. So it's not an easy decision because there are some cases the doctor told the children said no, try to stay back.
I think generally for most ordinary people, they need the morphine so to help them ease the pain. But for some, the very few people who practice meditation, they want to keep their mind very clear. Then they might inform before the time comes that they don't want morphine. They don't want all these things to cloud their mind. Some of them might even not want any anesthetic and all these things because their mind is strong. But very few people are up to that level. So sometimes also you don't know the situation, you just have to rely on the doctor, isn't it? Just trust the doctor, isn't it?
The smoking actually is attitude. For practitioners, we want to gain a clear mind. The smoking will make us very drowsy and we will put you to sleep. And even when we go to sleep, the pain doesn't go off, just like I've seen my relative. She's still in pain, it's just that she goes in and out of her sleep. So for practitioners, when they execute someone, what happens to them, they come to a state that we know and see that it's not happening.
I think it depends on the level of the meditator. If the meditator thinks he's able to withstand the pain, then it's very good. He can request for it. There are some monks in Thailand. They inform, in case I get a heart attack or in case I get this sickness, that sickness, I don't want to prolong my life. I don't want this morphine or anesthesia or anything. But you got to be quite sure you can stand. I have a doctor friend in Sydney, and he's a specialist, one of a few specialists in this anesthesia, working with terminal cancer patients. And he says that at the last stage, this pain obsesses their mind. So that you give them painkillers, after some time or so, it's useless. They keep thinking, it's like a habit ingrained in their mind. They can't think of anything except pain. So he says now the approach is to distract them by three things. One is to teach them meditation. Another one is like Tai Chi. Another one is yoga or something. Help them to relax and not to think of the sickness and the pain. Okay, shall we end here?